when I flew out to Virginia to see her family. It was my first time meeting all the aunts and uncles and cousins, and very differently from my family. I grew up where my dad's family lived in Nebraska. My mom's family lived in Northern Virginia outside of D.C., so we were always at least a 10-hour car ride from family. Mia's family all lives in Danville, Virginia, and so I got to meet the whole crew this weekend, and it was quite the experience. We got to have several different meals with several different family members and go from house to house and get to meet people whose names I've already forgotten, but probably shouldn't have. But that's just kind of how it goes, when you get to run through the gauntlet of all the family. But for Thanksgiving dinner that evening, we went over to Aunt Lisa's house, right, Lisa? Aunt Lisa's house. And we were over there, and everybody was gathering, and all the women were in one room near the kitchen, and all the men were in one room watching the football game, And it came time to eat dinner, and everybody gathered into the living room where Uncle Bob was. You see, Uncle Bob had something special to say to everybody who was in the room. He wanted to make sure that nobody left that day without hearing just a little bit of his journey. And he came into the room. He was sitting in this recliner, and everybody gathered right around him. And he said, thank you all for coming today. I just want you to know that there's 3 things that are most important in my life. He said, faith, family, and friends. And I don't have very many words, but I just want to let you know I'm very grateful for my faith, my family, and my friends. And then we went ahead and prayed for the meal, and then we all dug in and stuffed ourselves way too full. And it was a beautiful moment, but you see what made it really special, and for me, just kind of stepping into the family, I didn't know the whole story. You see, it had been about 13 months earlier that Uncle Bob's life had been shaken. See, about 13 months ago, Uncle Bob suffered a very severe stroke. In fact, I think it's multiple strokes, and it's caused him to lose feeling in certain parts of his body, and he doesn't have very good use of his arms. And over the last year, he's gone through all kinds of treatment and all kinds of physical therapy, and the doctors told him, if you don't get your movement in your arm back, if you can't use your arm within the next 6 months, then really that's the best you can hope for, and that's all you're going to get. You got 6 months to get usage of your arm back. And 6 months came and went, and he still had very little usage of his arm, but don't you know that it was the next 6 months that he started to regain even more strength in that left arm and being able to use it more and more. And still today, you would clearly recognize that he doesn't have full use of his arm, but it's not what it was 13 months ago. And you see, when you hear the story of how someone is shaken, it brings a whole lot of meaning to what we're grateful for. And so when I look at what he said with that perspective, that he's thankful for his faith that served as his rock through this hard time. When he was thankful for his family who stood by him through this whole thing. The friends that would write letters and send flowers and send chocolates and gifts and those kinds of things to encourage him along the way. Gratitude was put in a whole different perspective for me when I heard that part of the story. I want you to open up to Hebrews chapter 12. This is where we spent a few moments last week, but I want to look at the last part of the chapter. Go ahead and open up a Bible on your phone or on the table there with you. Hebrews chapter 12, almost all the way in the back of the Bible. If you're getting close to 1st and 2nd Corinthians, good, keep going. A little bit farther. Hebrews chapter 12. I'm just going to read the first few verses here to remind us of what we studied last week. And then we're going to jump to the very last 2 verses of chapter 12. Here's Hebrews chapter 12, first 3 verses. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross. You remember last week we talked about how can you be grateful, how can you live a life of gratitude when you're going through the pain, when you're going through the suffering. Jesus lived his whole life knowing that the cross was coming, that the sacrifice he had to make for the sins of the entire world was still before him, and yet he continued to press forward, to run the race marked out for him. So he scorned its shame and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Verse 3, consider him who endured such opposition from sinful men, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. So the question we asked last week was, what if I told you that the next 5 years or the rest of your life still contained some of the hardest moments of your life? And the hardest circumstances of your life were still ahead of you. Would you run from God or cling more closely to him? Hebrews shows us that sometimes we can't be rescued from our circumstances, but God rescues us through our circumstances. And more specifically, God rescues us through the circumstances of Jesus on the cross for our sins. But look with me here at the last two verses of Hebrews 12, verse 28 and 29. The author of Hebrews, who we don't know who that is, in verse 28, he says something that draws us closely. And I want you to think of the story of Uncle Bob here as we read this, how his life was shaken over this last year. Verse 28, Hebrews 12 says, therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us be thankful, or let us live lives of gratitude. And so worship God acceptably with reverence and awe, for our God is a consuming fire. Verse 28 again. Therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us be thankful, and so worship God. See, it's not really a question of whether or not you're going to be shaken in your life. Sometimes it's very sad things that shake us. Sometimes it's very great things that shake us. But what doesn't change in that is that we cling to a God who rescues us from a shakeable world, a destroyable life, and delivers us and gives us the promise and the eternal hope that forever we will live with him in heaven in a way that cannot be shaken, in something that cannot be stolen from us. And so while our lives are shaken, we still live lives of gratitude, knowing that Jesus has come and given us a promise that cannot be shaken. For the next few moments, I want to introduce you to a couple of stories. A couple of stories of folks who are living through different circumstances in their lives. Things that they've gone through in their lives that have shaken them a little bit. Things that they've experienced in the last few weeks, months, the last year, that has changed them, forced them to change. And yet the thing that you'll hear that consistently runs through that is an attitude towards God that reflects gratitude. These are real people, real stories of folks in our church who have journeyed through great things to very difficult things to extremely challenging things. And what I hope these stories leave us with is a little bit of perspective that no matter what circumstance you're in, no matter what is shaking you, that we continue to live lives of gratitude, because gratitude can change everything. So, sit back, enjoy these stories, and be asking God the question, God, what's the story of gratitude you're shaping in me?
Hey, I'm Brenna Logan. I recently went to Peru, and this is my story of gratitude. I think that a really hard thing with gratitude is that you think that you've mastered it and you think that you've overcome it and everything, and then you're right back into the spot where you're not grateful. And there are certain things that I take advantage of that are huge blessings in my life that I just am not, I forget to be grateful for, or I just forget to thank God for them and everything that He's done in my life. And so I just think that like gratitude is never something that I've accomplished, and it's never something that's fully done. It's something that I'm struggling with on a complete day-to-day basis. This past summer when I went to Peru, I came back and I was like, I'm gonna be grateful for everything. God's awesome. Air conditioning exists. Like, this is great. And then I got back and it was like, okay, college application time. You got to do this, this, and this. And so just being, a senior in high school and having all of these really hard decisions in front of me that I have to make, I recently have really struggled with being grateful for not only the opportunity to go to college, but the opportunity that I have to be able to choose where I go to college and to get a further education. Lately, I've just been so focused on, getting it done and getting the deadline and next thing. And so I really just haven't taken the time to really appreciate what opportunity I have in front of me and what a difference that can make in my life, as well as like the lives of other people around me. The reason that you need to be grateful and why gratitude is so important to me especially is just that if I'm not grateful and if I'm not expressing like gratitude towards God, I kind of start to feel like I'm entitled for all of the things that I have. The truth is that God has given me everything that I have and that I don't deserve any of the blessings that I have. But I definitely can feel myself like distancing from God, because when I'm not expressing gratitude towards Him, it's kind of like, well, I did this myself, so I can do these next things, and I don't really need to rely on God for anything. And when I'm not, expressing my thankfulness to Him, it's kind of like I definitely slip away from Him, and I definitely can feel myself distancing from Him because I feel like I can do it all on my own. So when I went to Peru, obviously it's a mission trip. So I went down there expecting to see a lot of poverty and see a lot of hard things. Something that really stuck with me was that not only are these people poor and they're never going to know a life that's not poor, they're never going to know anything other than poverty, but they're grateful for the things that they have. And so that really stuck with me, and that really just really made a big impact on my life, because if these people can be grateful for the hammock that they have because they can't afford a bed, or the soccer ball that we brought them and their eyes just completely light up, and if they can be grateful for that, I need to be grateful for all of the blessings that God has given me in my life. I think that the hardest thing that I had to do in Peru, that I had to rely on God with, is I got there and it was not what I was expecting. I was living somewhere that I thought was going to be way nicer than it actually was. And so it was I got there and I was like, God, what are you doing? I can't do this for a month. And so it was I just need you to get me through this. I cannot do this by myself. I struggle with gratefulness every day. Most of the time, it's because my expectations and God's plan don't exactly line up perfectly. I have my plan and I'm ready to do it, and I'm ready for, to execute A, B, and C. And God has kind of taken me on another path of I think this is a better plan. And so my expectations don't always coincide with that. And most of the time that's me saying, God, what are you doing? What are you doing right now? Why is this not going the way I planned? Why is this so much harder than I expected? Just something that I struggle with, I think I'll struggle with for a while, is just overcoming my expectations and just giving them up to God. And being I'm going to be grateful for everything that you give me because I know that your will is what I'm supposed to do. And even if it doesn't exactly match up with my plan, I know that, I'm going to be where you want me to be and that it's the right spot for me.
Hey, I'm Kevin,
And I'm Meredith,
and we have been married for 2 months. Woo!
and this is our story of gratitude.
When I think about a time when it was harder to be thankful and grateful for everything that you have, I like to get my time machine and just go back to a year ago today. Having a relationship that had gone on for that long, where we kind of had a tension involved with where is this going, we weren't even in the same location. Everything, all of our conversations were done via Skype. I was tired, she was stressed out, and it just became really formulaic. When I started thinking about putting a ring on it finally, which I had been for a few months before, I started stressing out about the timing. How am I going to do it? Where am I going to do it? Can I afford it? I remember one moment, it was actually Thanksgiving weekend. We were at a cabin in Gatlinburg with my family, and she had thought that that was going to be the weekend that I proposed.
Yeah, I did.
And I didn't propose that weekend. It was a couple of weeks after that I finally did it, but I just remember in that moment she was upset, she was crying, and I was thinking, gosh, I have really screwed all of this horribly up. 3 weeks later, I was finally finishing up with school. It was actually the day I graduated. I had family again in town, a lot of friends around, so I worked up the courage and I drove down to Nashville and bought a ring and drove back up to Knoxville, and she had no idea that I had done it. And she came up into town to celebrate, and that's when I finally did it. And that was a really great day of celebration. I think where I was really lacking in gratitude was I have this amazing woman, the woman that I love. We had just broken our relationship down to just a list of things that we had done today. You really lose sight of what it is about that person that you really like. It feels almost like a chore. Well, I have to have this conversation right now, but I'm really tired and I'm really stressed out, and I just don't want to hear about her work lunch or something like that. When in reality, that work lunch story was the most important thing I probably could have listened to that day. I think you don't really realize how much of your relationship is just sitting on the couch together or talking about what you're going to eat for dinner that night or cooking dinner that night. It just seems like really mundane to everybody, but that's really kind of the greatest things about being with somebody else. I really think that during that time, I thought that my busyness was an excuse to not appreciate the gift that I had in Meredith and the gift that God had given me in Meredith for my life. And the busyness in my to-do list was not fulfilling. The really fulfilling element was her, and I was trying to find fulfillment in something else, in getting things done and being busy and occupying my time instead of really investing the time that I needed to into our relationship.
So for me, it kind of ties back more to childhood, because I was raised I was an only child, a really small family, and had an abusive father. So when I was younger, I had an issue with gratitude as far as seeing other people with siblings or with big happy families, and how I was pretty jealous of, I don't know, the happy family atmosphere. In high school, I went on a mission trip with some friends, and this mission trip, we went to Arizona where we stayed in tents, and we had to dig our own bathroom. I mean, it was just straight up desert. And we were helping these people with this little vacation Bible school doing stuff around their town. And that really showed me that I was curling in on myself, focusing on the negative things that were happening to me when these other people had other issues. I mean, they didn't even have electricity, and kind of seeing more of the world and focusing on that more so than on what my problems were. I think one of the biggest challenges for us going forward is going to be getting more relaxed and not appreciating that time that we have together now that we're currently grateful for because we didn't have it. I think the more distance in time from that time that we didn't get to see each other, the more that we're going to just take it for granted.
You're saying that we're gonna get complacent again.
Yeah. So I think that'll be something that we'll have to watch out for.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very thankful that Kevin and I have found each other, that God has brought him into my life, and that we're starting this new chapter together. And I'm also grateful for the fact that we're not perfect, and that we're not supposed to be perfect, that we're going to have fights and we're going to have issues that come down the road and we don't even know what's going to happen, but it's all a part of a plan, and God doesn't expect us to be perfect in order for us to deserve his love. Like, we just receive his love, we're not earning it some way. So I'm really thankful we don't have to earn it, because I don't think I could. None of us could.
Hi, I'm Tyler. I'm 21. I lost my brother a month ago, and this is my story of gratitude. My testimony has been pretty boring throughout my life. You know, you always hear those stories of people's testimonies that were like, oh, I escaped drugs, or I went through this horrible trauma, and I always was slightly jealous of those people because they have such cool testimonies and such cool stories of how they came to the Lord, but I never really wanted one, honestly. I kind of wanted one so that I could tell people a really cool story and show them the Lord through that sense of a thing. But honestly, I probably took my boring testimony for granted a lot because I've had a really easy life. I got to go to the college that I wanted to go to. I got jobs that I wanted. I've just been really blessed. I have a perfect family. He's had a really good life. Up until about a month ago, it was actually 33 days ago today, my little brother was driving home from his girlfriend's house, and he fell asleep and ran off the road, and he had a car crash and he didn't make it. It was really instant, so that's good. But yeah, my life was pretty much flipped. I went to bed on Saturday night with my other brother, with a completely normal life, and then I woke up on Sunday morning to a life that I didn't recognize anymore and that I didn't really want to recognize. Had to do a lot of changes and things like that, and I'm not going to tell you that because of my little brother's death and since then that I've become super grateful, that I've changed, that things have happened, but I will tell you that I've learned a lot in the time. His death has brought a lot of people closer to God. My great uncle got saved, and then a ton of football players got saved from our town. And God is doing amazing things. He's brought my family, I feel closer together in a sense. We're still really broken, and we have a lot of bad feelings sometimes and things. We're not totally on the same page as God. I know God has a plan for everything, but that doesn't mean that I think I would have planned it this way. I think my brother could have done more alive than he could have dead. But I know that through everything, God's plan will continue, and I'm really thankful for that. Before my brother passed, my family was definitely, it would have been easy to take our life for granted, just because of how blessed we were. Every day was, it was perfect. Now that I look back on it and just think of how it was, there wasn't a day that we didn't. We had our little issues and stuff, oh, Colin was late for school this morning, or Tyler, had this going on, but we just had a super easy life, and I could see how we would have taken it for granted, but since my brother's death, we don't really have, I'm not going to tell you that I'm, thankful for that, I'm not going to tell you that I'm thankful for God's plan in killing my brother. I think he could have done more alive, but that's why I'm not God, so I would say that since he passed, my family definitely we don't take our lives for granted. We all we talk to each other every day now, and we tell each other we love each other, and we thank God for everything that we do have. We try not to dwell on what we don't have anymore because that's life, but we know we have the promise of heaven one day, and that's one of the things that I'm the most thankful for. I don't know how I would get up every day. I wouldn't be able to get up every day if I didn't have the promise that I was going to see my brother again, and that when the rest of my family passed, that I would see them again. And just to know that he's with Jesus and that he is more like he's happier and he wouldn't trade places with any of us for the world now. That gives me a peace that I wouldn't have otherwise. So that's the thing I'm the most thankful for. I would definitely say that my gratitude is not a result of my circumstances, because if it was, there's no way I could be thankful. But it's a result of what God has done and what he's provided in my life. And you have to just focus on things like that. You have to focus on the promise of heaven. You have to focus on our salvation and what he's given us in each and every day. And when you think of things like that, you really don't have a reason not to be thankful.
No weapon formed against me shall remain. I will rejoice, I will declare, God is my victory and he is here.
I want to just share those words from Hebrews with you one more time. Hebrews 12, verse 24. Therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us be thankful. And so worship God acceptably with reverence and awe, for our God is a consuming fire. Throughout our lives, we're going to be shaken. There's going to be moments and experiences that you go through where you're going to have an opportunity to listen to what God is teaching you and how you can respond to him, or you can ignore that and continue to just live on through your life and ignore how God might be at work. But one of the things that can help you listen to God and respond to him, no matter the circumstance, is if you pause in each moment and just ask the question, what do I have to be thankful for in this moment? Maybe it's a joyous moment like what you heard with Kevin and Meredith. Their story of being married. They're veterans at this marriage thing now, 2 months in. You know, or maybe you experience something like what Brenna encountered in Peru, where God clearly shows you that you have more to be thankful for than you could ever imagine. Or maybe you go through something as difficult as what Tyler recently went through just a month ago with the tragic loss of his 19-year-old brother. And in that moment, maybe you look and say, what could I possibly be thankful for? See, it's that moment particularly that Hebrews 12, verse 28 was written for. Therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us be thankful and so worship God acceptably with reverence and awe. The things of this world are so easily shaken. We are easily shaken. But we cling to a God who delivers on a promise that can never be shaken. And we cling to the hope that will never fade or never spoil. And that is the hope we have in Jesus.